Good morning. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the 8th Halifax International Security Forum. Thank you, Minister Sajjan, for your confidence in us and for hosting this event this weekend. 2016 is the most successful forum that we've held to date. There are delegations here from 70 countries, including more than a dozen defense ministers and close to 30 senior military leaders. Later this afternoon, we will be receiving a very large bipartisan congressional delegation from Washington, led by Senators McCain and Shaheen. And as we reported yesterday, as we announced yesterday, Senator Tim Kaine will be receiving our Builders Award later tonight. Over the next 3 days, we'll be having frank and sometimes difficult conversations about the issues that democracies around the world are facing now and the challenges they'll be dealing with in the future. The issues that we will be addressing are on our website, halifaxtheforum.org, and that you know very well. But we will, in an overview, we will be addressing issues related to NATO, issues related to Russia, challenges posed by China, and issues related and challenges related to international terrorism. These discussions and the fact that our participants come from a variety of backgrounds is what makes the Halifax International Security Forum so unique and so important. I also want to just say that one of the secrets to our success is Halifax itself. I'm always happy to be here. We are welcomed so warmly, and your hospitality leaves a lasting impression on all our participants. It is that warm atmosphere that allows concrete, constructive conversations that, over time, will lead to a more peaceful world. Thank you. Minister.
Great. Thank you, Peter. First of all, I just want to congratulate you for putting this security forum on. As you know, and most of you know, that I was appointed as Minister of Defense, and shortly afterwards I had to come to the Halifax Security Conference. So it was an opportunity for me to learn and immerse myself. Well, actually, probably more than immerse, it was actually a fire hose. And a fire hose, not from the security challenges, actually deal with from all the questions from all of you. But it was a great learning experience for me, and I've learned a lot. And Peter talked about some of the challenges and the conversations that we're going to have. These are some of the difficult conversations we need to have, because the challenges that we face to the security environment around the world requires different perspectives to come in, different experts, different people, experiences to come in, so that we can have a thorough conversation. And I'd like to say now, over the years, as Canada has announced various missions, and I've attended other security conferences, Halifax here really does allow for a thorough and stimulates a very comprehensive conversation, which to me is very valuable and helps all of us look at finding solutions to the complex security challenges that we face around the world. So on that note, I'd like to open it up to questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, when asking a question, if you could state your name and the organization that you're representing.
Thank you, Marika Walsh, Global News. I'm just wondering if each of you can tell me how you think the new Trump administration will factor into this weekend's discussions.
Well, I think anytime there's a U.S. election, there is always a discussion on that. One thing from a Canadian perspective, as we look at defense and security relationship with the U.S., Canada has had a profound relationship that goes back to the World Wars. And my personal connection is having served on the mission in Afghanistan alongside U.S. troops on the battlefield. I've, over the last year, have developed a very good respect and relationship with Secretary of Defense Ash Carter, and I look forward to having a similar relationship with the new Secretary of Defense when he or she is appointed.
I don't have much to add. I think that either way the election in the United States had gone, we are the first major international conference after the U.S. election, and the results of the U.S. election would have played an important part in the conversation. That President-elect Trump is coming into office. I think that there's just a lot of questions about what he's going to do, and I think that is going to be talked about at the forum.
What questions do you have about what we'll do?
Well, I think that as a candidate, President-elect Trump talked a lot about a lot of things, and I think that it's now for everybody in the world, here in Canada, in Europe, in East Asia, around the world, just to have confidence that the American system works, and that President-elect Trump is going to help lead the democratic world.
And I think also, just to add to that, when we had the last year's Halifax Security Conference, a new government was elected here in Canada, and there was a lot of questions of us as well. One particular question was about our role in Iraq and what we were going to do, because based on the campaign commitments that our Prime Minister had made. And I assured not only Canadians, but also the U.S. delegation that was here, we want to make sure that we have all the right information so that we can have a meaningful contribution, that Canada was going to play a meaningful role. And from that from those conversations, we took a comprehensive approach and made our announcement. And then we are now looking at the fruits of our labor and the coalitions, because over that year, we are actually now on at the liberating Mosul and finally defeating Daesh in Iraq. So these are just some of the questions that faced us, and any new administration would be in the same manner.
Good morning, Minister. Mike Tutton from the Canadian Press News Service. I guess the leader of the opposition is hoping to meet with Senator McCain and others in hopes that'll be a go-between to the new administration. Will you be meeting with Senator McCain and other members of the U.S. delegation to start explaining your position on NATO and hoping perhaps they can convey that to the president-elect?
I will be meeting with the U.S. delegation. I've got to meet the delegation last year, and I've met with Senator McCain in Washington as well during my number of visits that I've had. In terms of explanation, our position has been very clear. We've already demonstrated our commitment to NATO. It was our government's position that we will play a stronger leadership role with NATO, and we have done that. We are Canada's one of the 4 framework leading nations in the role that we're taking in Latvia, and we are very proud of that. NATO plays a very important role to the collective defense and some of the challenges that we face. NATO has played a critical role in Afghanistan. We were part of that, and we look forward to having discussions with the U.S. delegation. I mean, our commitment is very clear, and I look forward to having those discussions with the delegation.
Thank you, Minister. I'm sorry. Yes, you'd like.
I'd just like to add to that I can just tell you, hoping to put this thing together, that one of the reasons the congressional delegation comes is to meet with Canada's Minister of National Defense, and I know that they're looking forward to that meeting from their perspective.
Minister, the new administration is on the record saying they would like to see an increased spending allotment from other members, including Canada. Do you have any concerns that you'll have to shift funds towards NATO and other expenditures in Europe rather than peacekeeping, which has been such a priority for your newly elected government last year?
Our government, when we looked at being a responsible partner in the world, it's not just about looking at NATO in isolation, a coalition that we're part of it in Iraq, or peace operations out of here. One of the things, how we look at things, is the challenges that, in terms of conflict we're facing around the world. They're not independent. They are interlinked. the challenge that we face in Iraq faces into a displacement of some of the foreign fighters and the leadership into places like Northern Africa or into Eastern Africa. The migrant crisis that's facing in Europe is a result of places in the Middle East and in Africa as well. The challenges within Syria and what's happening in Europe in Crimea. I think Canadians can be very proud of the role that Canada has taken and the leadership role that we have taken. It's not just about what you spend, it's what you do. And we have clearly demonstrated that Canada's role is going to be that we will take an active participation to be that responsible partner. We have a defense policy review that we're putting the final touches on before deciding on the direction that we'll be going. A very comprehensive review that was launched. And I'm very happy with the information that we have collected. And we will create and support the Canadian Armed Forces that's going to be last for the 10 to 20 years. That's not only going to meet Canada's needs, but also our allies as well, because they were part of the consultation.
Thank you. Next question.
Steve Putticombe from CBC. I'm curious about Mr. Trump because he did campaign quite strongly on the fact that he thinks the Americans pay far too much for NATO, that it's just it's a dead weight for him. How are you going to deal with that when you talk with your American colleagues? Because it's, I mean, if the Americans pulled out of NATO or refused to chip in, that would be a substantial loss, would it not?
There's a lot of discussions that need to be had. NATO does play a critical role. We can also say, safe to say that when Article 5 was used was after 9/11, and Canada played its part, as many other nations did as well. When you look at the totality of NATO, I will speak on behalf of Canada. We have taken a leadership role. Our contribution to NATO is quite large. We do, as I mentioned, it's part of our defense policy review, looking at the Canadian Armed Forces that we want to create as our government, not from the previous government. And when it comes to the contribution to NATO, Canada is the 6th largest donator to NATO as well. And these are the type of discussions actually we'll be having a lot more for the U.S. and looking at their intentions. But Canada's commitment is clear. We support NATO not only for today but also for the long term.
Without question, sir, but still that remains, what do you say to Mr. Trump and his new cabinet and his new undersecretaries regarding their concerns that if we don't see a much larger contribution from everyone, including Canada, I'm sure, this could be, they might pull out?
I look forward to when President Trump's inauguration, and I look forward to when his cabinet is not only appointed but up and running, and we will have a lot of these discussions and many other discussions as my colleagues in my cabinet will have on many different other issues as well.
Thank you.
Sabrina Fabian, Radio-Canada. Given what happened yesterday, Minister, are the forces able to protect themselves against cyber attacks?
Sorry, I didn't
The
understand.
website, the online cyber attack that happened yesterday on the Canadian government?
Oh, yes. I'm very well aware of that. One thing I'd like to rest assure Canadians that we in Canada have tremendous capability and the technical knowledge in terms of cyber defense. But as you know, cyber is it's not one entity, and you can't just you got to be constantly vigilant at looking at where the various threats are. This attack was nothing to be concerned about. Nonetheless, our agencies evolve quite rapidly to these type of threats, and making sure that not only our government infrastructure, but also how we collaborate with industry and making sure our industry's cyber protection is also up to the same standard as well.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions.
Paul Léger, Radio-Canada. I'm just wondering, had you been able to predict the outcome of the U.S. elections, how different would the agenda of this forum look today?
I'm not sure that you know that we didn't predict the outcome of the elections. The agenda is written by our agenda working group. The names of the agenda working group are in the program. All of them will be here at the forum, and I encourage you to talk to them as well. But we begin meeting in the summer, and the agenda is finalized Labor Day in September. And we address themes, we follow themes in the course of the year. We talk to different agencies, certainly in Canada, but in Europe, in East Asia as well, about what are their priorities. And so our agenda, if you look at it closely, really has less to do with day-to-day headline news and more to do with the themes that we are working on as a democratic community over time. And so I'll just mention, so the agenda has not changed. It would have been the same for the election either way. Last year, sadly, we met 1 week after the terrorist attacks in Paris. And in that case, I will also tell you, we didn't adjust the agenda at all, and it stood up to address the needs just a week after a major terrorist attack. So I encourage all of you to look at the agenda, because the agenda really is, and has now over time, proven to be the main issues that the international security community is going to be addressing into the new year.
Steve Chase with the Globe and Mail. I have a question to follow up to some of my colleagues' questions. There was one of Ukraine's vice prime ministers was in Ottawa yesterday, and I gather she'll be talking to you at this conference. She said that she and her country is very concerned about the statements that Mr. Trump made during the election. He, for instance, said that he talked about the fact that he believed people in Crimea actually preferred living under Mr. Putin, and he, of course, called NATO obsolete, which, of course, then prompted a response from NATO, General Pavel last summer. She said she's going to be talking to you about this and about asking Canada to help maintain a united front against Russian aggression. But I wanted to ask you, are you not concerned about the statements that Mr. Trump made during the summer about NATO? I'm not just talking about the spending issue, which of course we know is a political commitment, not a NATO treaty commitment, but he said NATO's obsolete. He said that people in Crimea prefer to live under Mr. Putin. Are you not concerned about this yourself?
I'm looking forward to having the right conversation with the new Secretary of Defense when he or she is named. And like my colleagues in our cabinet, we'll be having the same conversation as the Prime Minister will be having a conversation with President Trump-elect as well. When it comes to Ukraine, these are some of the aspects that I work very closely with Minister Dion on. We are committed to supporting Ukraine. We have our troops there training some of the Ukrainian forces. We signed a free trade agreement as well, and we want to be able to assure the Ukrainian leadership that Canada will be there for them. And but when it comes to the U.S. administration, I look forward to having not only discussions about Ukraine from a security perspective, but many other discussions as well, because there are challenges all over the world that we need to discuss. For example, we have the counter-ISIL meeting that we host, and there's another one that's going to be coming up. So there's a much wider conversation to be had, but this is no different from the conversation that my counterparts wanted to have with me when I was appointed as Minister of Defense.
We have time for one final question.
I'm just wondering, there's nobody from the Trump camp here in terms of speaking at the security forum. There's no Trump operatives here. What legitimacy does this forum have if you're not hearing from the people who, as you said, will be leading the world?
So there are a number of ways to answer that question. I'm going to answer it the following way. We have 8 United States senators coming. We had 2 congressmen scheduled to come. Now we have 1. Why do we have 1? Because the congressman who was on his way, Mike Pompeo, has just been named to be Donald Trump's pick to lead the CIA. And so the leaders of the Trump administration are in New York, as you know, putting a team together. It's unreasonable to expect that anybody at any senior level is going to travel outside of the borough area when they are putting together a United States government. That being said, we have the leaders of the United States military, we have leaders of Congress, all of whom are integral to the governing process of the United States. And I would suggest to you that you follow specifically Senator McCain's comments. He will be giving the Halifax chat a one-on-one interview tomorrow. He is the leader of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and he is actually going to take the opportunity to answer your question specifically and talk about what the president can do, and also the powers of the United States Congress, so that there actually is a greater international understanding of the division of power.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that is no one nation has all has all the answers. No one nation can deal with all the challenges that we face around the world, and that's why it's so important for us to be able to work together. These are the conversations that we will be having in this security forum. We do have representatives from around the world.
70 countries.
That's right, and we just had a discussion, 2-hour discussion on peace operations. This will be, and a U.S. representative was there. We look forward to having future discussions as well. It is critically important, I think, to be able to understand that the complexities of conflict is extremely unique. We need to be able to leverage the experience and the talents and the resources of all our nations together. And this is what the Security Forum does. And we do have the right mix of people to have this very thorough dialogue. And I can assure you of this. When I was still serving, and the surge went into Afghanistan, I was asked to deploy with a U.S. unit at that time, because the military also understands, especially from a Canadian-U.S. relationship, we have a tremendous relationship that goes back for a very long time into many different conflicts. And to now, we have with our NORAD relationship, we have our officers that are embedded with U.S. leadership in the U.S. And this is what this forum allows, to have the military leadership, experts, government representatives to come together, talk about those challenges, because no one nation has the solution for the challenges that we face. Okay.
Thank you so much for your time and participation. We look forward to seeing you throughout the forum.
Thank you.